Didn't have my microphone turned on. Howdy and welcome to the review of Exam 2 in International Monetary Economics. Well, I think I figured it out. I think I got the test working properly. These were the grades on Exam 1. 0 A's, 4 B's, before I curved them. 0 A's, 4 B's, 4 C's, 8 D's, and 13 F's. This is what they are this time, but with no curving whatsoever because it's no longer necessary. We've got 7 A's, 7 B's, 7 C's, 4 D's, 4 F's. This is much more like I would expect in a normal semester. And let me tell you what I did to make this work this time around. Let me find my exam here. Oh, here's the other page. All right. This is what I did. Let me do this first. Okay. We've got two basic questions, right? And F and E. Okay. 1, A, B, C, D, E, F. 2, A, B, C, D, E. Okay. So those are the questions on the exam. And I thought that number 1 was a giveaway. It was just read back over your notes let me remind you the question. What variable does that directly affect in the equation? This was after the Queen had announced she was going to be sovereign again and in power, and everyone expected a more valuable pound. So you just had to figure out which one represents pound depreciation. Well, it's A, all right? So you just got to look back at your notes for that. So I figured that's a free point. I'll go over the individual questions in a moment. Free point, 1.5 free points. And what's this one? Yeah. 1.25. But then the next one was worth, and I'm going to do it this way, 2. But I was never going to take off more than 1.25. So you got 0.75 free points on that one too. Then on the next one, 1.25, and then they were worth 2 and 2. Oh, let me do that in black because red are all the free points. 2, 2. All right, but I was going to take off no more than 1. And no more than 1. Yeah. 1. Unless you left it blank. Okay. So here was the idea I hit on, actually not until I sat down to actually grade everything. I was worried about giving questions that you just had to look up to get the answers. I figured, it was going to be all A's in the entire class if I did something like that. And that turns out not to be true. It turns out that I can ask things that are straight from the notes and people still miss them. So that's kind of good news for you because it means that I can put questions on the exam that I think are just dead giveaways. All you got to do is, if you remember these over here, let's see. In the example where we had a fiscal stimulus or an increase in investment, did the U.S. end up with a trade surplus or a trade deficit? That's really easy, all right? You just look it up and give the answer. And you already knew that the question was going to be on the ZD diagram, and you already knew it was going to be on those equations, right? So, but it turns out not everybody gets that right. So I can do that. I didn't think I could. I didn't think that would be possible. During a regular semester, that's precisely what I do. During a regular semester, I ask questions where I was like, well, geez, you should know this from the notes, but it's not an open book, open note exam. So you're having to recall it. So I figured it's more challenging. This, I figured the level of challenge would be too low, but it's not. Which, again, is good news for you because it means I can continue to do this on the final as well and just have some giveaway points. And now check this out. Let's add up these points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9 3/4. That's almost like where is it, the Harry Potter? 10, 11 3/4. I'm going to confuse myself here if I don't get off of Harry Potter. All right, let's see here. And that is a 78%. So what I did was, before I started grading, I went through and I decided for myself, okay, which one of these are, you just got to look it up, all right? And if you made good, if you outlined the materials well for the quizzes, and if you had everything all, if you studied because you knew what this was going to be about, you knew that was going to be about, then 11.75 of those points should have been pretty darn easy, all right? So this starts the good student already with a 78. They've already got a 78, all right? So, in fact, that's almost a B, right? So your solid student should start with almost a B already, and then all they're really competing for are these, let me circle those in green. They're really competing for these points right here. Oh, I'm sorry, I actually circled that incorrect. Yeah. No, that's right. Well, actually, it's right that it's not right. On this one up here, yeah, it's actually the inverse of that you're competing for. Because I was giving you 0.75. You were going to get that unless you left it blank. You were going to get 0.75. So you're competing for the remaining 1.25 as the solid student. And over here, I was giving you 1 point on this unless you left it blank. I was giving you 1 point on this unless you left it blank. So you're competing for that remaining 1 point. So the good students are really in a position of competing for those final 3.25 points on the exam to try to get themselves, up in this range or this range, right? And at least 14 people did exactly that. They, not only got the ones that I figured you should get that right, and then they got the free points that I gave away on F, D, and E, and then they got some of the other points too, right? All right, so that's how I set it up. I was thinking that wouldn't work, but it works great. I'm going to do that again on the final. I'm going to, come up with whatever I'm going to come up with for what the test is going to be on. I'm going to let you know what it's going to be on, and then I'm going to build the exam specifically so that if you get the easy ones, you're going to get, in contending perspective, it was a 75%. All right, the same calculation, it was a 75%. So somewhere around there. If you just have your notes complete and you've studied hard, you're going to get that. And then you're going to compete for those final points to put you over the top in the A or B range. And I really like an exam that works like that. That's how my regular semester exams work. So I think I've found a successful way of merging the way I do it in a regular semester with a semester where it's going to be open book, open note. All right, one more thing before I go over the exam, and that is at this point, I still don't know who earned what. Because the way the system works is, when you upload it back to the system, then it assigns a random number to you. And so I go through and I download each of those, and if you're number 7, student number 7, then I download it and I save it as user 07, and user 12 or whatever it's going to be. And then I grade those. And then when I go back, which is what I just did a little while ago, and put all the grades in, it still doesn't tell me whose test it was. It will not tell me whose test it was. They're all in the system right now. It won't tell me whose test it was until I hit the word publish. And then it will immediately send out to all of you the fact that your grade is now on the webpage. You can go check it out. But I didn't want to do that until I had this video done. And so by the time you see this, it will all be over, of course. I've got to finish the video, then I've got to convert it to the format that YouTube likes, and then I have to upload it, and then it takes a few minutes for it to process there as well. All right, so let's see how everybody did. And here's my, I don't need that anymore. I'll save that for the dog to chase at some point. Okay, here was the exam. Let's see. Okay, open book, open note. Yeah, all right. All right, recall these equations, and I gave you the whole thing, right? I mean, I didn't see any point in not giving you those. All right, so I gave you the whole thing. And say Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II announces she's going to be taking over the UK government. This is greeted with tremendous enthusiasm. Everyone expects a stronger pound. So where is that going to show up and how? It's going to show up in A, which is the expected appreciation of the pound, and it's going to go up. All right, so there's two things you got to say there. You got to say it's A, and up. And let me look at my key here. I'm guessing I did a half a point each on those two things, because that seems like a logical thing to do. Oh, I didn't even write it down. Oh, also, by the way, if you had said instead it's going to affect E superscript E, oh, that would have been fine too. I accepted either one. Either A, A subscript pound, or E superscript E. All right, either one. So, and many people did very well on B and C here, so I don't mean this as an insult, but these were very easy. Which one's expected to earn a higher rate of return? Well, the pound. You moron? For crying out loud, think about it. It's the pound. All right. Where are capital flows going to go? England, or the UK. The UK away from the US. All right. And then I decided, well, let me just ask you some general questions. Which two variables are pretty much irrelevant, and why are they pretty much irrelevant? Now, this is a place where I had a number of people saying C and L are irrelevant. Period. Moving on to the next question. It says, why is that? And although I did it, people say, well, and the reason is because they're irrelevant. Well, you just said the same thing twice. I needed to know what those are, which the majority of people did. So C, of course, is capital controls, and you're not going to have many capital controls in a developed nation. And L is liquidity, and there's a number of people pointed out, although you didn't need to be this specific. The U.S. is probably going to be more liquid, the dollar, than the pound, but there's not going to be much difference. So the problem is that C is probably pretty dang close to zero for both of them, and L, probably not exactly the same, but not enough difference to, the liquidity, not enough difference to make a deal out of it. All right, let's see. Yeah, all right, so next one. F. Let's see. Okay, so continuing the thing about the two developed nations, and yeah, you know what, of course, interest rates. I struggled with that. I was like, well, do I say it or not? I said, I went with this, right? What if neither changes their target? In that event, which is the only variable that can possibly adjust to restore equilibrium? In which direction will it move? And then, please be as specific as possible. Because what I wanted you to say was E superscript E. So, and not just A. I'm sorry, E superscript S, rather. E superscript S. It's going to be the spot exchange rate that adjusts, thereby changing A. But if you just said A, well, there's two different variables in A. So why was A changing? So I tried to make it, and it worked pretty well, because as you can see, the grades were very good. Hint, you sort of need to talk about two variables here because one is inside the other. All right, so I tried to make, I hate it when people miss a question because it wasn't clear enough. All right, so I don't know if I gave it away, but the real answer, of course, is E superscript S, and it's inside of A, subscript pound. So if you never mentioned A subscript pound, that was fine. I was really after E superscript S, but I wanted to make sure you knew that. All right, so that's why I added all that other stuff on there. So, and let's see. I don't have a lot of notes here on grading because people pretty much nailed stuff. Okay, I will tell you this. Yeah, that the variable that we'll have to adjust is A, that's a half a point, because E superscript S is rising. That's 3/4 of a point. So that's all I got on that one. So the way it goes back to equilibrium, is A's got to change. But that's because E superscript S changes. E superscript S goes up, which makes A smaller. And remember, R subscript pound is larger once the Queen made her announcement. Fascinating stuff. And then finally, the one that I really thought was more challenging, and that is, why will what you said in 1E happen? In other words, explain the underlying process in terms of the economic agents involved. Capital flows, capital flows, capital flows. Right? I even asked it up here to try to get you thinking along the right lines. To which country will net capital flows be attracted? Because remember, it's not exactly the pound people are buying. They're buying pound assets. Nobody fills up their garage except for that one nut I told you about with foreign currency. They're going to buy financial assets in that foreign currency. So what I have here, I have a long explanation, but where I put the points down was the expected excess return on the pound causes capital flows from the U.S. to the U.K. 3/4 of a point. Remember, oh, I erased it. It's worth 2 points. You can't lose any more than, I'm sorry, you automatically are gifted 0.75, so you're fighting for that last 1.25. 0.75 of that last 1.25 was something to do with capital flows. Everyone's buying up UK assets. But in order to buy UK assets, you got to buy the pound. And so, as a consequence, that then bids up the value of the pound as well. All right, so 0.5 point on that. And that was that. All right. Then, question 2 was the ZD diagram stuff. And focus. Yeah, I decided on the first ones there, you know, A, B, and C. Well, let me just have you tell me something about what we did originally. And that turned out to be a lot of nice free points for people, as it should have been. For some people, for very few people, it wasn't. Let's see, I believe it's a deficit. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, deficit, because it causes the economy to expand and the dollar to rise. The second one, don't tell me. I think that's also a deficit, isn't it? Yeah, because of the fact that the higher interest rate causes the dollar to appreciate, and then the economy does shift down a little bit, but there's still a deficit at the end. But remember that on B and C, there's still, even though there's a reversal in the direction, it still ends up with the same thing it started at. On B, a deficit, and on C, a surplus, all right? And it said why on that one. Why? I want to make sure you understood why you ended up with a surplus, and excellent answers. Yes, indeed, you are correct. It is because the D curve shifted up because of the, where's my answer on that one? Oh, yeah, up due to the trade surplus, all right? Let's see here. Oh no, I'm forgetting the way I asked it. And in which direction did the D curve shift and why? Oh, that's all I asked. All right. I was thinking I asked trade deficit, trade surplus again. I know it's part of the answer, but it's not what I asked. Which way did the D curve shift and why? It moved up because of that trade surplus. Excellent answers. All right. Now here's where we get complicated. And at this point, there's only 2 points left that you're competing for at this point. So if you've got everything up to there, you've got a 13 out of 15, which I believe is a grade. I can't remember now. I know it's at least a high B. If it's, I don't think it's an A, but it's at least a high B. Actually, I want to know now. Calculator, calendar, calculator. 13 divided by 15 equals 87. All right, so that's a high B. That's what I thought. All right, so this one says, recall but don't draw. I mean, you can draw it if you want to. No law against it. So it's America. The open economy ZD diagram. All right, so let's see. I guess I'm obliged to do that now. Let's see. I guess I'll label the axes, but I won't fill all these things in. PY. Okay. How would the bandwagon effect show up on there? And not just where, but in what manner? Obviously, as an open book exam, you can look back and see what a bandwagon effect was if you want to, but I figured most people were fairly familiar with that, which indeed turned out to be the case. First problem with those that got it wrong. The bandwagon effect is on the exchange rate. It's not on the demand curve. It's not on investment. It's not on, there were people that were applying it to other phenomena. It was about the exchange rate. Remember, that was a focal point of, oh no, not the bandwagon, it was volatility. But that was on exam 1, talking about these characteristics of exchange rates, volatility, and bandwagon effects. And so it's got to be the exchange rate. So it says, how would it show up, and in what way? It's going to be right here, okay? It's going to be right there. That is where the foreign currency market is on this. That's the domestic macroeconomy. That's the domestic financial market. This is just a set of reference points to understand where balance, you know, whether we have a trade surplus or a trade deficit. There. That's the one that has expectations built in, and it's where the exchange rate's being determined by the international financial market. So it's going to show up there, and essentially what it's going to cause to happen is, let's see here. And there were some excellent answers on this. Let's say that shift took place right there. Can you see that? Yeah, that shift took place right there. Well, because foreign interest rates went up, all right? Because that would cause the whole thing to shift to the right. Well, then the bandwagon effect would simply be people saying, hey, look, the dollar fell. I'm jumping on that bandwagon too. All right, so it tends to cause the FXM curve to move a little further than it was before. All right, it can also cause it to continue moving to the right, even though we have economic events that are more recent economic events, which is what one student argued, at least one, that well, like at the end of the 1980s, I'm always talking about that the dollar continued to appreciate, even though all the other underlying factors were now indicating the dollar should be falling, but it was still going up because of the recent past movement, because of the strength of the recent past movement. So you could even have a situation where you could argue this instead. You can say, well, if in the recent past FXM had been shifting to the right, but then but then the U.S. Then foreign interest rates fell. Then the bandwagon effect could cause anything up to, if the dollar had been falling recently, could cause it to actually go to the right, or at the very least not as far to the left, because people are still buying on the basis of that momentum, on the basis of that, what do you call it, bandwagon effects. And let's see what we got here. Yeah, I don't have a lot of notes on there. Oh, no, yes, I do. Right here. All right. There was going to be, you're fighting for 1 point, right, at this point? A half a point on where on the diagram, and a half a point on how, right? So that was that one. And then the last one is one of my favorite questions, and I hope one of yours. Let's see. I guess I'll keep this up here. It just said about the bandwagon effect. Now it's saying, all right. What about, what if the overriding factor in the forecast of market participants was, hang on, let me turn off the air conditioner. There we go. It's not that hot today anyway. What if the overriding factor in their forecast was they believed that nations would trade surpluses, their currencies would appreciate, and those would trade deficits, their currencies would depreciate? There were a couple of perfect answers on this. And I love this question because this is how Dornbush had his 4-quadrant diagram set up, to where people expected what neoclassical economists expected, right? So they assumed that their expectations would be the same as those of the economists who were studying it, and they believe that trade balances tend to disappear by themselves. So what Dornbush assumed was, well, then clearly the rational foreign currency dealer would also believe the same thing. And so the model's presumed outcome became the self-fulfilling prophecy from the financial market. All right, so let's check this out. Great stuff. Let's see. Oh, well, actually, let me erase these two. It's going to be on these two right here. And you didn't have to draw anything, as I've already indicated there. In fact, nobody did. But this is what you were describing. Don't tell me. Dollars per FX, PYR. Okay, I'm not going to bother to label it right there if that's okay. Then let's put us right here. And let's say the U.S. interest rates are R sub 0. The Fed's targeting those, so they're not going to move. Oh, I didn't mean to put a dot there, because in fact the whole point was going to be that we weren't going to be there. Okay, let's say we're right there. Let's say we're right there. And let's further say, as the question indicated, that the overriding factor in agents' forecasts is that they believe that the currencies of nations with trade deficits will depreciate and those with trade surpluses will appreciate. This country, the United States of America, has a trade deficit, all right? Trade deficit. So therefore, agents will believe that that currency is going to depreciate. And how long do they think it'll depreciate? Well, until there's not a trade deficit. So in the situation that began at point A, that would lead to this shift up here. That leads to that shift, which leads to point B. All right? So the FXM curve is constantly moving in a way that pushes us back on the BTFX curve. As one student correctly put it, and I have no idea who it is because I haven't hit publish yet, they said, well, that expectation makes BTFX a set of equilibrium points. And that's right. Now we are continually attracted to it. If that's what dealers believed, then we'd be continually attracted to that curve. If we're to the left of the curve, then the dollar will depreciate. If we're to the right of the curve, then the dollar will appreciate. And how long? Until there's no longer a trade deficit or a trade surplus. Great question, John. All right. And 1/2 of a point on telling me where it's going to show up over here, and 1/2 of a point on describing the process. And that's it. All right. So, man, I'm really relieved that this worked out so well, and that I now have a system that I can use for the final. I'll tell you more about that when I have more thoughts about it. I believe we don't have a quiz this week. I believe it's next week, and I believe it's shifting back to Tuesdays, as I recall, but look on the calendar. And I also believe that this week, while there is not a quiz, that there is a reflection due. Be sure you do those. All right, so where do we stand right now? Well, we had 2 exams, 6 quizzes, and I believe 3 of those reflections. So we've got 30, 30, and 3. So I've got 63 points down. Where will the remaining 37 points come from? Well, there's going to be a 20-point final exam. There's going to be 3 more quizzes. Oops. 3 times 5. And 2 more reflections. 20, 15, 2, 37. So we're like almost right at 1/3 of the way through the semester. Man, it is coming on fast. Don't forget, I believe that the last day of finals is the 24th of November. So where are we today? 18th. So we've got like 2 weeks. Probably got about, well, we got about 4 or 5 weeks left because that's how I divided the semester up, you idiot. Excellent work, and I will go send this to YouTube now. Au revoir.